Blessings BookTube, happy Tag Tuesday. I'm going to be doing a tag called the Reading Shifts tag, created by Hannah at Hannah's Books. And thank you for tagging me, Book Chat with Pat. I'm going to be doing these au chaud, as the French say, off the cuff. There you go, that's how we say it in English. Just due to time constraints, very busy here at work this semester. You might be surprised to know, though I don't script them often, always prepare my little talks with y'all. But I haven't really, I think I glanced at these when I originally got the tag a while back, so that's all the preparation I've had. Let's get into it. Number one says, how has your reading developed over your lifetime? Do the kinds of books that bring you the most pleasure now differ from the books you loved most earlier in your life? If you've seen big changes in your reading since you've matured, what might explain your changing interests? Funnily enough, I started very early. I mean, I remember in high school already, reading Montaigne and Pride and Prejudice and things of that nature. And of course, I had already read, Christie and Tolkien and those guys. So no, I pretty much stayed pretty constant with that. There have been times when I said, you know what, okay, I've never really read deeply into Italian literature, and I'll go to a university that's got a strong program in that language and then get their reading list and read, a bunch of German classics I'd never read or something like that. And most of my life now, half my life now, I've been reading the Nobels. Always struggled to keep up, and I've read most of them. I guess the biggest change in my reading would have been from the end of academia. So I rarely do I read scholarly stuff anymore. Every once in a while I'll pick something up just to sort of see, that used to be me. Or something particularly interesting crosses my path. But in fact, it's quite hard to, because unless you've got a university library near you that will grant you on-site access, a lot of public libraries don't really subscribe to much anymore at all. If you don't have access to academic libraries at all, you're pretty much, it's difficult to read some of the stuff that I used to read academically. Okay, number two says, do you find yourself choosing different kinds of books at different periods of the year? Oh, I'll add one other thing. So I always have that esprit d'escalier, the spirit of the stairs, as soon as I end a prompt, I think, what did I not say? I always felt that I was underexposed to scripture. Even though I was raised in a house full of spiritual books, there was nothing stopping me reading, and at one point I got a World Bible and read a little bit in a lot of the Adi Garant and the Puranas and a lot of the world scriptures. But yes, so finally when I went into seminary, I feel I really started catching up on my being somewhat well-read. Not really. When you compare the chapter and verse people, right, who know the Bible backwards and forwards. But anyway, I'm half decently literate now in religious literature. Number two says, do you find yourself choosing different kinds of books at different periods of the year? For example, do the seasons affect what you read for pleasure? Similarly, might you read very different kinds of books while on vacation? So as you know, I mainly live abroad. So seasons vary depending where I'm living, if I'm in the Sahara Desert or I'm in the Lacandan rainforest. What I do is I read a lot of the books of the country that's hosting me at the moment. As you can imagine, I try to take advantage of the access to them. Oddly enough, it's difficult to get access even in Southeast Asia to Southeast Asian literature. But certainly when I was in Mexico, I was reading a ton of Mexican Latino works. Honduras, again, very hard to get a hold of books, just any books in Honduras. Read a bunch of the Hondurans, where's the last places I lived before then. China, I was trying to read. Excuse me. There's some of the Chinese classics. I mean, Chinese literature is so vast. I need to go live in India because there's so much Indian literature I need to come to grips with. Number 3 says, do specific experiences in your life ever shape what you choose to read? For example, do you read obsessively about childbearing when your kids were little, about gardening as spring is about to begin, about the experience of grief when someone you love died? Because I'm escapist in my reading, if I'm actively working at that moment as, let's say, a forensic social worker, or a shelter supervisor for a homeless shelter or immigrant shelter or something, that's the time when, except for socially with friends who are talking about something, so I can, talk to them about that work. I won't be seeking out tons of literature on that subject because I'm living it all day. So I'm more likely to be reading something completely different from my workaday work. Of course, that's different when you're in academia when all you do is read your subject, right? 4, have there been, and I will say this, when I got my diagnosis, then I did a ton of reading about mental illness that I'd never really done before. So that was one moment there. Okay, number 4 says, have there been any times in your life when circumstances have limited or changed your reading in some way? Perhaps caretaking responsibilities or a big move that made it hard to find as much time to read as you'd like, or personal illnesses that made it harder to concentrate, or maybe just long-term travel that might have limited your book choices. How do you deal with those circumstances? Yeah, no, it's pretty steady. I mean, you might think like the place where I had the least facilities for reading, being limited to the sunlight hours, it being almost impossible to read by lamplight in the Sahara. I mean, for one thing, you're dripping on the page. It's becoming paper mache. So you might have thought I would read less in the Sahara. I read probably the most. So I had nothing but time for reading. Times when I wasn't reading a lot. Sometimes when I had particularly heavy, like in the PhD year or two there, I had so much academic reading. There wasn't time for much leisure reading. That would probably be the only thing. I'm thinking back now to another time when I did a ton of reading about a subject that I was living. That's when I was teaching on the Navajo Nation. Then I did, in addition to like sort of culturally reading lots of as much Navajo and other Native American stuff as I could get, did a lot of reading on education, specifically multicultural education, and what little there was that I could find on Native American education. Okay. So, where do we go? BookTube is number 5, I believe, Ron. BookTube is full of discussions of reading slumps when dedicated readers seem to lose interest for a while in books. Sometimes they just can't find a book that appeals to them. Have you experienced a slump? If so, how do you handle it? If not, do you have any advice to give people who are experiencing slumps? Yes, I do. I don't have slumps, and the reason is I have so many books on the go at any given time. Why would you own Netflix and only watch one series at a time? That's crazy. If you're not in the mood for that series, then yeah, of course you're not going to watch. So, if I'm like, I've got a book right now that I've put aside for about a month now, but I've got 6, 7 other books that I'm reading in. So, and I got another one that I just picked up that I, kind of stopped reading about a couple months back. So just picked that one up for a little bit of change. Because I realize I'm almost finished with it and I want to have something to talk to you guys about. So yeah, have lots of different books on the go at any given time. Fiction, nonfiction, funny, serious. So that, whatever your mood or whatever, you just pick up the one that you like. And that's a really fun way to be reading in general, I think. And it certainly avoids those slumps. Or at least I've not really ever had a slump like that. Of course, there are times when I'm reading more or less, usually to do with the opportunity costs of watching, of screen time. So it used to be I would refuse to own a television, so I had 0 competition, 0 screens. Then, of course, they got at me through the computer. And so now, I'm pretty much obliged to have a computer, right? So then, of course, everything is streaming at you on the computer. So there are various times when that's happened that the screen sort of took me over for a while. So I'm always sort of battling that. Um, Now I really pretty much only watch YouTube and almost only BookTube content, some nature stuff, um, some history, but yeah. So BookTube is full. Oh, oops, that was where I did that one. 6 BookTubers also talk about book hangovers when readers are so moved by a book that they find it difficult to move on to a new book. Have you ever felt this way? No, for the aforementioned reason that I always have, I'm always finishing one and starting another. So that also, this feeling of finishing gives you the boost of, adrenaline, like, oh, I finished a book. And of course, the starting a new one is exciting. So, reading various things at once, you always are having those moments, right? Um, Now, I did have that with writing. So, a book might take you 5 years to write or 10 years to write. And when you're done writing it, particularly the active writing, sort of the end of the more creative edits and start getting into the boring edits. And then again, when you're totally done with that book, which you never are, but I personally have usually postpartum depression because that's a whole world that I lived in for a long time that's, I can't play around in anymore. I mean, I could, I guess, write a sequel or something, but and characters that I hung around with for 10 years or whatever that I'm not going to hang around with anymore. So yes, I do have that with writing. 7 is tell us about a few books that almost always work for you. Something that might have remained a favorite throughout your life despite any changing reading tastes. Something that always seems to hit just the right spot when you need a lift. Or perhaps some lifetime book hangover where the text will always be at the back of your mind. Since I virtually don't reread, there's just so much new stuff to read. All I could really say is that when I'm really depressed, I do often return to things like Calvin and Hobbes, little cartoons, to pick me up. I love, for whatever reason, I'm Wally from Dilbert is my hero. He's sort of like um, passive resistance. I think it's wonderful. In an office setting right now, and I want to use the passive resistance of the great Wally. I wanted to write a book called The Tao of Dilbert, kind of like the Tao of Pooh or the Dharma of Dilbert or something like that. All right, that's it. So I'm going to tag a few people down below. Thank you for listening to my ramblings, and we'll see you next Tag Tuesday.